Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso. It is a dark and cloudy day here in Santiago, perfect weather to watch a movie, and with that in mind I figured that today would be a good day to start my new series of watches in movies. As the name suggests, I'm going to be covering watches in movies, and some of them being the really obvious product placements, others are going to be the more obscure ones that you don't really see but that are still really cool watches. And I'll also be highlighting what I think in terms of how these watches match the character that they're placed with, and just taking a different approach to, admiring some of the different watches that you do see on film and how that influences our choices when we buy. So to start that off, we're going to be starting with one of my favorite movies, which is Face Off, starring Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. It's an action thriller from 1997 in which the basic premise is, identity switching. So Nicolas Cage and John Travolta's characters, they switch faces, and I'm going to be focusing specifically today on Nicolas Cage's character, the villain Castor Troy. Now, this psychopathic terrorist for hire is probably one of my favorite villains because he just doesn't give a fuck. He's completely crazy, but he's also really over the top and extravagant. It's the perfect role for an actor like Nicolas Cage, and of course he has a wardrobe and accessories to match. Now, for the majority of the movie, you actually see Nicolas Cage playing John Travolta's character, playing Nicolas Cage's character. So you only really get to see the pure Castor Troy at the beginning of the film. So that's what I'm going to be highlighting, the watch that he wears at the beginning sequence at the airport. You don't actually get a close look at this watch. In fact, I actually had to look at it from a few different angles, do a lot of freeze framing to figure out what this watch actually was. So it clearly wasn't a product placement, and possibly not even a conscious design choice by the wardrobe department because they didn't really show it off. It was just a little detail. But still, seeing it, I had to know what he was wearing. So the first thing you can see that it's definitely an integrated strap. So my mind first went to AP and Patek, thinking, alright, maybe it's a Nautilus, maybe it's a Royal Oak. You could tell because of its shape, the rounded shape, it definitely wasn't a Nautilus because the Nautilus has a more sort of elongated shape. And it didn't really look like a Royal Oak either because the parts of the case that were cutting into the strap weren't the two little striations that you normally get from the bracelet of the Royal Oak. So it couldn't be that either. And also it was a bit too round to be a Royal Oak. The next thing I looked to was thinking, oh, maybe it's an Hublot. If you consider this movie was in the late 90s, Hublot was maybe about 10 years old, maybe they were trying to bring their profile up a bit. This was pre-Jean-Claude Biver, so they were still an independent company, and it did have that little lean from the case coming onto the bracelet, so I thought maybe it was an Hublot, but it didn't match that either. So then what I did is I ended up going on Chrono 24, filtering gold watches, leather bracelet, from the late 80s up until 1997. Now there's a shot in the movie where you do get a look at the face of this watch, and you see it's got rings on it, but it's not a chronograph. So that's how I managed to isolate it and find out that this was in fact not an Hublot, not a Patek, not an Audemars. It was an Ulysse Nardin, which makes perfect sense because Ulysse Nardin was much more prominent in the late 90s. So it stood to reason that, of course, that's a great candidate for a watch to look at. So in looking at that, I found out that this was in fact an Ulysse Nardin Astrolabium Galileo Galilei. Now, launched in 1985, this watch was over the top with complications. It was astronomy and astrology themed, so it had tons of different complications, so many so that it actually ended up breaking the Guinness Book of World Records for watches with the most complications. It had a total of 21 functions, including, but not limited to, positions of the sun and stars at any given time. Sunrise, sunset, dawn, dusk, moon phases, moonrise, moonset, the month, the day, the zodiac, it's automatic, and has a date. So it's a perfect watch to complement Castor Troy's over-the-top personality. I mean, 21 functions, it's in solid gold. Really, you couldn't get any better, you couldn't get any more Castor Troy. And what surprises me is it's actually quite a contemporary watch. At 40 millimeters, it's much bigger than the watches were back in those days. They could easily release it today. But the last thing I want to highlight about this watch is the fact that I think that this could actually have been Nicolas Cage's own watch. I mentioned before that you don't actually overtly see it, so it clearly wasn't product placement. You don't see him thanking Ulysse Nardin in the credits. So This definitely wasn't paid product placement. Now, costume departments do go the extra mile when it comes to making sure that characters are dressed appropriately, even down to little details like their accessories, and Castor Troy definitely, they put a lot of emphasis on his accessories. You see he's got all gold accessories. He even changes his sunglasses on arrival for no apparent reason, just to show how extravagant he is as a character. So there is some argument that maybe the costume department did arrange for that, but again, this is a $30,000–$40,000 watch. Might have been a bit expensive for a detail that they weren't even getting paid for. So I have reason to believe that because Nicolas Cage is such a watch guy, he's even been seen sporting extravagant watches such as the Leopard Daytona, I have reason to believe this could have actually been his watch. Which just makes it even cooler knowing that, you know, he put so much of himself into that character. Now that's just my theory, but I still think it's a cool little detail to pay attention to. And the last thing I want to focus on is the current version of this watch. Obviously this is a watch from 1985, used in a movie in 1997. It's not a watch that's currently available unless you get it pre-owned. But what can you get as an alternative today? Well, thankfully in 2017, Ulysse Nardin gave us the modern version of the Astrolabium, which is the Ulysse Nardin Executive Moonstruck. Ironic in its naming because Moonstruck is another Nicolas Cage movie from earlier in his career. Probably not by design, but still a nice little coincidence. Now this 100-piece limited edition is in fact in rose gold, and it's still loaded with complications which would maybe justify its $75,000 price tag. That's right, $75,000. Over double what you would have to pay to get the Astrolabium if you wanted to get it pre-owned. But it doesn't short you in terms of those functions. You still have a world time with 24 hours and 24 different time zones. You can actually see when the tide is in and when it's out. It has sun and moon positions, a silicone escapement and hairspring. It's COSC certified now, has 50 hours power reserve, it's automatic, and it still has the date. So definitely Ulysse Nardin hasn't shortchanged people. It has, however, been adapted for the modern day. At 46mm, it is quite large, and it is now rose gold instead of yellow gold, which again, reflective of our time. Now rose gold is a lot more popular than it was back then, and obviously back in the 80s when the Astrolabium was originally released, it was yellow gold and nothing. So I definitely think that if they remade Face Off today, they could easily still use this watch, but I still find that the original has more charm to it. It might be my bias, I do like things from the 80s and 90s a lot more than from present day, and also at the end of the day, this is the watch that they used in the movie, so of course I'm going to be more biased to it as well. But in any case, let me know in the comments what you think of both the original Astrolabium as well as its modern counterpart. And let me know what you think if you've seen the movie. Do you think that this watch suits Castor Troy's personality? Also let me know in the comments below what other movies you'd like to know about that featured watches. What other characters did you see wearing a watch that you're wondering, what did they have? I'll be happy to take the time to figure out what they're actually wearing, because it is quite entertaining and you do also find a lot of really cool watches as you're going on this search. So let me know in the comments below what movies you'd like to see featured as part of this series, and if you liked the video, please do like it and share it. And of course, if you like the content on the channel and want to see new videos about watches every week, please do subscribe to Shaluso. In any case, thanks for watching and we'll see you on the next one.